Escalation is a game mode that requires a different playstyle and builds to be successful, especially in the higher tiers. The wrong builds and a reckless playstyle will only lead to frustrating failures and wasted coins. I have already over 100 hours of experience within Escalation, with countless completions at the highest tier. All of the builds I'm about to showcase are tried and true at tier 10, plus they do not require prototyping them to see immediate success. If you are ready to farm Escalation like this, then get ready for the top 5 best builds to use for Escalation. Thank you guys for clicking on today's video. Now this is by no means a tier list, and all of these builds I'm going to showcase are viable in their own unique way. But I'm going to give you the most optimal composition and min-max setup for Escalation. And that composition is 1 Future Initiative Healer, 2 Striker DPS builds, and 1 Tipping Scales blue screen support build. With this setup you will have extended CC, high consistent DPS, and heals to remain in the fight. I wouldn't expect this composition if you're going to randomly matchmake though, as it will rarely come together, and I do not think it is the only way to have successful Escalation runs. This is just a setup that my group uses for fast and efficient tier 10 clears, and we have reached sub 15-minute clears with this composition. All of these builds are viable in random matchmaking tier 10 and group play. Tipping Scales blue screen support. This build can serve as the rock of your composition, providing consistent and constant DPS output while CCing enemies and amplifying your team's damage by having survivalists for 10% increased status damage for your team, and the ability to throw fire grenades to then swap to the lefty and put sledge onto your enemies. This will provide a 20% increased damage for your team. Ignore the talent description for sledge though, as it never got changed. It still increases you and your team's damage by 20%. It has been tested and proven to work. I use a 4-piece Tipping Scales with the salvo holster for the increased fire rate and overdog gloves. This combination is just personal preference, but I think it is the most optimal setup despite being able to get more consistent damage with contractors. I still prefer the overdogs though on this build specifically. The blue screen provides incredible value with its steady, consistent damage output. Plus, the CC it provides enables your team to completely evaporate NPCs, making this build one of the best for group play. I currently have 58% crit hit chance and 85% crit hit damage. While that might seem low, the 4-piece talent for Tipping Scales will increase your crit hit damage to over 568% once fully stacked. Your goal with this build is to CC, provide amplified damage through throwing grenades on grouped enemies, switching to your lefty shotgun, and then raining bullets downrange with your blue screen. This is the best DPS build to enable your team. Build number 2. Hardwired Infinite Seeker Spam. This is a unique build that has shown success in every tier all the way up to tier 10 by displacing enemies from cover while still providing support for your team in the form of a heal hive. This setup is best utilized when your team does not require much heals and you have solid DPS that can take advantage of enemies being staggered out of cover. You can also play this build with a Stinger Hive, but I would recommend keeping the heal hive for quick refreshes of your Seekers. I have mine set up for maximum damage of the Seekers, which can be seen by having Glass Cannon. This amplifies your damage by 30% overall. I play this build carefully and in cover because of the incoming damage that is amplified by 50% to me from running Glass Cannon. If your team takes advantage of this support, the NPCs will be consistently staggered and the opportunity will be open for quick kills. I have skill damage rolled on every piece, 2 skill haste mods, and 1 repair skill mod. Only 2 skill haste mods are needed because the rest will put your Seekers at basically 1 second cooldown, enabling you to infinitely spam them. Your goal with this build is to throw your Seekers, wait for them to go on cooldown, place your hive, pick it up, and throw your Seekers again. Rinse and repeat is the name of the game for this build. The BTSU gloves are there to pop your hive in case your team needs to refresh the Reviver hive, so be on the lookout for that. Build 3, Future Initiative Healer. This is by far the best healer build that has 2 different variations depending on what your team needs. The 4-piece Future with the chest provides 25% added damage for your team as long as you're at full health, which you are most of the run. I use an Alp Summit for an additional repair skills and the Birdie's Quick Fix to instantly pick up teammates while having damage resistant during and after. This exotics is one of the most useful at any escalation tier, but is quite noticeable at the higher levels. I also find that this is mission dependent, as some missions are easier to consistently go down than others. Going down escalation is not an issue when you're running the Birdie's quick fix. Another variation of this setup is running the BTSU gloves and running perfect opportunistic, which increases all of the damage your team does by 15%, and this pairs extremely well with the Scorpio. As a healer, you should be consistently stacking Scorpio stacks on the enemy to CC them and provide that amplified damage at the end of the stack. Scorpio exotic shotgun CCs enemies and provides 20% additional damage to your team at 9 stacks. The specialist you'll be using is Survivalist for 2 reasons: increased healing output for your team, and the biggest one, increased damage after applying a status by 10%, which you're doing with the Scorpio, and then the Fire Grenade, which then you swap to the lefty to apply Sledge after doing so. Your playstyle with this build is to provide healing and CC. With everything combined, you're giving your team 25% damage from the future chest, 10% from Survivalist, 20% from Scorpio, and 15% from Perfect Opportunistic should you use it. Overall, the maximum buff you're giving your team is 70% extra weapon damage. Build 4, Striker's Battle Gear. This is going to be your highest burst DPS option. The argument I hear most often is, do I run Tipping Scales or Striker for the highest DPS? And the answer is yes, run both. You should look to have at least 1 Tipping Scales and 1 Striker DPS on your team. Tipping Scales provides more DPS over time than Strikers, but Strikers provides a higher burst. You can quickly shut down enemies while fully stacked with Strikers and Frenzy, which is the talent of choice, paired with the military MK46 replica, the best LMG to use with Frenzy and Striker. Why not the GR9, you ask? It is a decent option, but it should be avoided due to the lack of uptime with Frenzy. I run the MK46 and the CTAR with Measured. Why the CTAR? Because it allows for me to quickly burst enemies on health such as Reds, or when I strip the armor off elites, or if I need to take down other enemies with health such as robot dogs, tanks, and heavies. I don't always swap to my AR for those reasons, but if I need to make a quick kill or I'm at the end of my LMG mag, I'll swap to finish the fight. ARs by default have health damage, which also helps to take down some of those health scaled enemies. This build has a variety of setups and they are all good. It honestly comes down to personal preference. I got this setup from another creator named Toasty. He creates some awesome Division 2 content. I'll have his channel down in the description for you guys to check out. I like this setup specifically because it allows me to make a quick swap to the Birdie's quick fix in emergency situations, and I have clutched countless runs doing so. A lot of people run the Striker's backpack with either Overdogs and Contractors paired with the Hollow Man, and honestly that's just as a strong setup as this one. The Hollow Man is a good option because Escalation scales off heroic difficulty, which means there are less elites and more red and purple NPCs, making health damage a strong option. With this build I have 58% crit hit chance and 112% crit hit damage. I recommend using an optimal range scope and the suppressor on your LMG for increased accuracy and consistency in your damage over range. On my AR, I have the same thing since there are times in Escalation where you need to DPS across range, and the optimal range attachments help keep your damage more consistent across those ranges. Build 5, Refractor Healer. This is my least used build, but it can still be effective if you prefer using skills. I don't prefer it in tier 10, but it can still be useful nonetheless. I have it set up similar to the Future Initiative Healer in terms of the Survivalist for its benefits, Sledge with the lefty, and Birdie's Quick Fix option, with the optional swap to Opportunistic, which I would swap to the Stinger Hive if I'm going to do that, because you could use BTSU for the skill resets for your team. I have skill damage rolled on every piece with a Wyvern for additional skill damage and Empathic Resolve to give your team 15% increased damage when they are healed. The gameplay loop for this build is simple. Your skills do the damage and your team gets healed. It is important to make sure your turret is placed high and able to do damage to the NPCs, because if it isn't, your team is not going to get healed. Bad turret placement will destroy your success with this build. Well, there you guys have it. The absolute best builds to run in Escalation to provide incredible value to your team. I would encourage you to have 1 DPS build and 1 healer build to make it flexible within your group compositions. All of these builds are easy to make. Run some countdown or craft some of the pieces. They don't need to be prototyped to see success in the higher tiers. I've completed tier 10 doing the most damage and getting the most kills with no prototype pieces. That does not mean throw one of these together and go do a tier 10 for your first time. Start where you're comfortable and work your way up. Running any of these builds you should be able to do no less than tier 5. Play smart, use cover, and if you're doing tier 6 or higher, it is best to find a piece of cover that covers your whole body, aim down sights, and move back and forth. This will make sure you never get shocked by a hotfoot. The season is almost over, but for my modifiers I have max headshot damage, and I use Overlord to instantly get my revive hive back once I am picked up. This puts it on a 15-second timer. If I'm running the tipping scales blue screen build, then I'll use the blackout pulse for more CC. That's all I have for you guys today. Enjoy the best escalation builds and comment down below which one you're running, or if you have any questions. I stream on the weekend right here on YouTube, so swing by, kick back, and enjoy the carnage. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.